The first week of each month we do an absolute beginner session, which we did last week, and then the other weeks we do more advanced sessions, but we are aimed at the beginners, so any questions are welcome. You can ask through the YouTube chat, or you can ask questions through Slack, and there's instructions below in the YouTube video or on the meetup page on how to here it is, Slack space, so email skypieproject@gmail.com, so replace dot with a dot and @ with the @ symbol. So today we write command line programs and how to run them from Python. So all you need to have installed on your computer is Python, which you can get from python.org. So I'll just open up that, show you what the site looks like. There we go, and in downloads you can download version 3.9.7, so this works on Mac, Windows or Linux. On Linux you've probably got Python already installed. Okay, and all the session, we have a session summary that we store on GitHub, and so tonight's session summary is already up there. So I'll just show you how to navigate to it. Now if you're looking at YouTube, I've put the full link directly to the session that we're going to be using, but if you're looking at the meetup page, this just takes us to GitHub, and so we'll go to GitHub by clicking on session summaries, and we'll find the ones that's in online, and it'll be meetup 115. There it is, and so this is the code we'll be looking at tonight, so you can look at the raw version of that, or you can download it. Okay, so task 1 here is how do we run a Python 3 console from the command line. Now when you installed Python, I would have asked you, do you want Python put on the path, or if you're running Mac and Linux, it should already be on the path. If you're running Windows, then you can run this command if you tick the box to say it is on your path. If you didn't tick the box, Windows still installs another program called py.exe, and that is always on the path, so you can use that instead. And we'll look at tonight, and we'll actually see why you should probably always use py.exe rather than python.exe, because it does a few other things for us as well. So let's have a look. If I'm on Windows here, I presume most people are on Windows. If you're on Mac and you've got any Mac specific questions, you can ask me in the questions, and I'll see if I can help you. So if I just type in Python 3, actually that's for Mac. If I just type Python, you can see it opens up a console. I've got version 3.9.5 installed, and that worked because Windows has Python on my path where I've configured it in environment variables. Ask a question if you want me to show you how to add it to the path, but if you use py you won't even need that. Now we can quit out of there, and we can also run it by py.exe. And once again that opens up Python for us. Now you may, if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know I always like to create a virtual environment to run Python, and the reason I do that is because whenever we install third-party libraries, we don't want the third-party libraries that we've installed for this Python project to interfere with our other Python projects. So we isolate each of our Python projects into their own Python virtual environment, and it's very easy to create a virtual environment. First of all, so I'm in command prompt here, so I'm going to make a directory. That should be the same command on Mac, in which I'm just going to do all the work for tonight. So I'm just going to call one Beginners Python Machine Learning 115, and I'll change into that directory 115. And so when I'm in here, there's nothing in here at the moment, so I'm going to create a virtual environment. So the command to create the virtual environment is to run Python, and py, what it'll do, it's always on the path, so I can always just type it, and it'll find the latest version of Python that you've got installed. So if you've got several versions of Python installed, it'll just grab the latest one. There's also command line arguments you can use to select a specific Python, or you can even select Python 2, but I think you'll mostly want to use the latest version you've got, and so we'll just use it there without any command line arguments for selecting version. So we type py, and then we're going to run a module, and the module we're going to run is venv, which comes with a standard Python install, and it's a virtual environment module. And we're going to create a virtual environment, and the one we're going to create, we'll just call it something. So I'm going to call mine venv115. So that should have created it. If I have a directory listing, you can see it's created a folder here called venv115, and in that is a Python install and some links that of places that I can install third-party libraries and not affect anything else. If you're using Anaconda, you can use conda create --name venv 115, and also put in after it Python, and that'll say create a virtual environment with just Python in it. We don't want all the other stuff that comes with Anaconda, otherwise you'll create all these massive virtual environments every time you create one. Now the next step is to activate it. On Windows, we activate it using this command here. So I'm going to type in the command. So the command is in the folder, and it's in the scripts folder, so I'm just using tab completion here, which means I type the first letter or first couple of letters of the folder name and then press tab, and then it finds the rest of it for me. So if I type acc and I press tab, it finds activate for me. Now if I press enter, it activates the environment, and you can see here that venv115 is the active virtual environment we're using, and it'll always have the name here in front of my prompt on the command line. So now, even if I didn't have Python on my path, and if you're Mac or Linux, you can even now just type Python, and you don't even have to type Python 3, and it'll find the Python that's in our virtual environment, because that's the active one. And so you can see, just as before, it brought it up, and you'll have to take my word for it that that's the one in the virtual environment and not the system-wide one. So we'll quit out of the virtual environment and get back to the command line. So what we want to do now, we're going to create a Python script. So a script is just a single file that's got some Python code in it. We're going to call our Python script myname.py. On Mac or Linux, you can use the command line editor Nano. We're going to use on Windows Notepad, or if you've installed Notepad++, you can use that as well. You can also do this in an IDE like PyCharm or Spider or Visual Studio Code or even Atom. There's lots of IDEs around to make your Python development easier, but we're just going to try to use the very basic tools tonight. So if I type Notepad, that'll run Notepad, and I'm going to give it a file name so it'll know what I'm trying to create. Do you want to create a new file? Yes, I do. That's good. So this is going to be my Python script in a file called myname.py. And it's going to be a very simple program. It's just going to print a string. It's going to be a format string. So we're going to precede the double quotes with an F. And it's just going to say my name is, and then if I use the curly braces, it means I can embed the value of an expression into the string, and the expression I'm going to use is just double underscore name double underscore, so that's 2 underscores before and after the name. You can just copy and paste it out of the document if you want. Let me know if you're having any problems with that. I can certainly go over any of these things again. So let's save that. That's saved. And back here on the command line, I now want to run the script. So all I have to do is I have to type py and then the name of the file, or on Mac and Linux is Python 3, or even just Python in front of the name of the file, because you should have your virtual environment activated. Alright, so it's come back and says my name is main. So because we ran it this way, that's the value that gets stored in this special, it's a special Python variable, which you'll see later how it can be used for particular things. Okay, so that's running it as a script from the command line. Now we want to try running it, run the Python console on the command line, and how do we run the program then? Okay, so we just run the console by typing Python without anything after it. So it brings up the console for us, and we can see we're in the console here with the 3 greater than signs. And then we type import my name. And you might remember the import command you've used in scripts before. And what import does, it actually opens up the other file and runs the entire file, and then closes it. But you can still then reference parts of the file in the environment that you're in. So we're in the console, or you could reference it from another script. Okay, so when I say import my name, the same program ran, and this time it says my name is my underscore name. So when I run it from the command line, it says my name is main, and when I run it from within a console, it says my name is my name. So you can see this is when I've used the import statement, it comes up with the name of the file that or the module that it's that's been imported. When you're running it as a script, it gives you main. So it's the main program that then imports other modules. So we can use this later on to find out whether the person who's running us is running us as a script on the command line, or running us as an import into another module. Now if I do that import again, I just press the up arrow there to quickly type the same line again. Nothing happens. And that's because Python knows that it's imported that module already. So it's got access to all the variables that have been defined in there, any functions that have been defined. They're all defined, so it thinks it doesn't need to run anything again. And so it, if I run it again, it won't run the print command. If I import it again, it just won't run it again. If I did that several times on the command line, it would run every time. So that's one thing you've got to be a little bit careful about if you're doing dual imports. Really the second import does nothing. Now sometimes, especially when you're developing code, especially if I was developing my name module, I'd be making changes to it, and if I wanted to import it again, I'd want to see the changes. So to do that, I would use these functions that you've got here in task 6. I'd use the import lib, and it allows me to reload my name just as if it had been imported again, and this time it runs it. So let's try that. There we go. So it reloads it, it reruns it. My name is my name, and then it actually returns a value, which is module my name. So that's what it returns. And you know that when you're using Python console, if the last expression that you did returns a value, then it will display that value. So for example, if I had an expression 2 plus 3, it would return 5, and so it displays that value 5. If I didn't want that value to be displayed, then what I should do is store it in a variable. So I could say m equals, and I'll just m equals import reload my name. So then it'll store the module in the variable m, and so I won't get that value being displayed on my console, but I've also got it in my module, in my variable m, which I can reference at any time that I want to. Okay, so we're up to task 7 now. Actually, we're getting through these tasks pretty quickly, so let me know if I'm going too quickly for you. There's not a lot of coding at this stage, it's just copying and pasting. Now, POSIX, on the POSIX command line, which is your Unix, Mac OS, Linux, BSD, they're all POSIX operating systems. They have a flexible way of linking a file to the executable that you want to run, and that's called the Shebang Line. And it looks like this. So it starts off with the hash and then an exclamation mark, and then it says how you want to run this file. So if you're running a script, it needs something to run it, and so what this is saying, you can put here the direct path to your Python 3 executable, or they've got another form which is more useful, and so this is the one I would always recommend, is if you say /user/bin/environment env, it says find Python on your path, or find whatever on the path, and then it says here what it's going to be, so Python. And you can have other languages here, it could be Perl or it could be Ruby or other things, so it's just and you can even have a specific version of Python in this line. So it's a very flexible way of linking this file that you want to run to an executable. And when you do that, it means that you don't have to type Python 3 in front of the file name every time you want to run it. So if you see substitute Python, all right, so you can put different versions of Python, Python 2, and on Mac and Linux, all you have to do is make the file executable by this command, change the mode of myname.py to add the executable flag, and then you can just run it by itself without putting Python 3 in the front. Now on Windows, our Python launcher, which is py.exe, will parse that Shebang line just like it does on POSIX. So there's another reason that they've provided it to us on Windows, and it doesn't exist on other operating systems because the other operating systems don't need it. So I'd recommend putting this line in if you're trying to run stuff from the command line. Now I've been putting this line in a lot of my code. You'll see it's in a lot of the sample scripts in the GitHub. If you try running them from PyCharm will actually also parse this line and work out whether you want to run it in the terminal or whether you want to run it in the PyCharm running window. So just be aware if you find it running, PyCharm is going to use this, and PyCharm on Mac and Linux is also going to require that you've made the file executable. So that's a thing to watch out for on those operating systems. So let's go back to, we'll put this into our notepad. And so it's just a line at the beginning, and then we save that. And now if I use py, my name, and it runs. Now that's actually no different to before, but if you'd put in Python 2 there, then py would have found Python 2, and you need Python 2 installed for it to do that. Okay, now when you install Python on Windows, it'll often associate py to Python 3, so you can just type the file name and it'll just run because it associated with Python 3. Now that required no, it's probably just required py to be installed. Similarly, you can double click, so let's try double clicking. So I'll go to my home directory, and we created one called bpaml115, and there's the Python script. So if we double click on that, and that flashed up a window, ran the program, and finished so quickly it closed the window, and it did all that on my other monitor, so you didn't see anything at all. But and I can't make it come up on this monitor, so you're not going to see much there. But if you try running it on your own computer, you might see it flash up and disappear. Okay, what's next? Oh, okay, so when you're let's give you a little bit of a tutorial on the Unix command line. When you try to run and execute a file that's in the current directory, you can't just type the name of the file because the current directory is not on the path. So if you type the name of that file, it won't find it. Now it did here in on the command prompt, because in Windows command prompt the current directory is on the path.
So my name.py has got a single print statement in it, and that print statement goes to the standard out of the console that we're currently in. But we can redirect that standard out by using a greater than sign. So for example, if I was to type in and a greater than sign after the name of the program that I'm running, then it will redirect all the standard out to another place. So let's call that place myname.txt. And so you can see now when I run it, I don't get any output. I don't see my name is main. But if I do a directory listing of our current directory, I'll see that there's a new file in there created called myname.txt. And I can have a look at what's in it using type command. And sure enough, there's our the output from our program has been redirected into that file. Okay, so before we were talking about current directories in PowerShell, so let's have try the same thing in PowerShell. So I'll change directory into our session directory, and I'll activate our virtual environment. So I'll type venv, and see when I press the tab completion, it puts dot backslash at the beginning, just like in Unix we talked about before, the dot // because you're going to execute something and it's not going to run unless we specifically say which directory it's in, because the current directory is not on the path. So scripts activate. We can see it's activated because we've got the name of the virtual environment at the beginning of our command prompt. And now if I try to run it, myname.py, and I press tab completion. It put the dot backslash at the beginning, and I do that, and it actually did run. And like before, when we double clicked on the file name in a Windows File Explorer, it opened a new shell and ran it within that shell. So we didn't see it. Once again, put something in there to pause it so that it you can see it if you want to try that. If I try running it without the dot backslash at the beginning, you see you can't find it, once again because it's not on the path. So now we can run it using the Python command at the beginning. It's put the dot backslash. It doesn't need that for files. So you can put it in if you want. So we run that, and we get the output coming to this console. So that's useful, and we could redirect it from this console if we wanted. If we tried running as we did before, dot myname and redirecting that output, it won't work because see, there's nothing there. It's this is capturing the standard out for this console, which is different to the standard out for the other console.
Oh yeah, so we're redirecting input and output. So let's create this whole program here in task 8. And we'll replace it in here. That's not part of the program. So the first thing we want to do, so we've got the greater than sign, single greater than sign is creates a new file with the output from the program. So that's that, and you can see I've added another logging line into my code. I put in a warning, so you can see the warning there, and it just says what the Python version is. Python version is sys.version. So we're getting the warning coming up to the console, even though we've redirected the output to this file called myname.txt. Now if I look at myname.txt, type myname.txt, it's still just the original print statement went there. Now I could run the program again, and this time rather than use the single greater than sign, I'll use the double greater than sign. And what double greater than sign means is it appends it to an existing file. Right. So when I run that, once again I got the logging message still coming up to the console. If I look in the file, I get it twice, because that's the first time I ran it, and then the second time I appended, so I got it again. And every time I append, it will just keep growing and growing the file. So it's really good for some sort of log files, but of course you can see the logging isn't going to the file, only the print statements are going to the file. So let's have a look at this final version. And what this one does is it redirects standard out to myname.txt, and there's another thing called standard error, which is output 2, and I'm going to say that's going to go to another file called myname.log. So at the moment, standard errors is showing on the console, but we were going to redirect that output to a different place. And so if I look in myname.txt, it's back down to one line because I did a single greater than, which means overwrite anything that was previously there. And I've done a single greater than sign on the 2 and created a file called myname.log. And that's where the logging message has gone. Okay, now Leo has said line 224 has issues with earlier Python versions. My 224. Let's go back. Have a look at 224. Yes. So if you want to make it compatible with your earlier Python versions, just get rid of that equals sign on 224. And so that's came in Python 3.8, I think. So if you're running an earlier version than that, you won't be able to use that equals sign. All right, so that's the output. We've done standard out, which is a single greater than sign, or double greater than sign. We've done standard error, which is the 2 in front of them. That will also work with a double greater than sign. Let's now do how we can take input into our program. So let's create a new file called InReader. We'll create a new file, and in this file it's just a short little program. So let's have a look at what it does. So it uses the sys library, and the sys library gives you access to any command line arguments that are provided, and they're stored into a variable called argv. And what we're going to do is we're going to take every line that comes in, and we're just going to print it out in the reverse order. Okay, so let's save that and see if we can run it. So if I just ran it by itself in reader.py, it'll say my arguments are that. Okay, so that's how I ran the program, by just giving the name of the program. And now everything I type, which is what is considered to be standard in, it'll reverse it for me. So if I type Tim, it'll give back Mitt. If I say a dog, it'll come back God. All right, now to finish the program, because that'll just keep going on forever, I'm going to type Control-C and bring me back to get back my command prompt. All right, now I can also, rather than the command line taking standard in from the keyboard, I can take standard in from the output of another program. So on Windows, like I could have the program type, and we'll just see what that does. That just shows me the contents of this file, myname.log, and I can take that output from type and direct it to become the input for InReader. So the way I do that is I use the pipe symbol, and for me that's shift and the key above the enter key on my keyboard, or you can just copy and paste, and then py InReader.py. So my arguments are InReader.py, so that's what sys.argv tells it, and it's taken all the input that's come into it through this pipe and reversed it all. And so you can see here it is, warning, root, Python version 3.9.5 and tags, and so it's just done the whole thing backwards. So that's pretty useful. If you're wanting to do this on Unix, use the cat command rather than the type command, which is Windows. All right, now task 9. So this is, we're going to only run a particular bit of the code if it's run as a script and not imported as a module. So we're going to use that, what we worked out before, that the value of name changes depending on how the program has been run. So let's grab some code here. And what are we going to call it? Let's go into Notepad. I'll fire up another Notepad, and we'll call it run or import .py. We'll create a new file. I'll paste in our little bit of code here and save that. So if I run that from the command line, it says I am running this file as a script. And then if I run it from the console, so I go into the console and say import run or import, it says importing run or import. So it's just running this second bit of code here. And so you can do lots of different things in each of those sections of your if statement, and you'll see this quite a lot in sample code that you'll see. Okay, good to see you back, Dave. And I hope you've found the new link. Okay, so task 10, command line arguments. Oh yeah, so normally when you run programs, so for example we ran Notepad and we put an argument after it, which was the name of the file we wanted to create. Similarly with type, and the name of an argument was the name of the file we wanted to create. So in Python we can write a script that will take arguments after it as well. So let's create a file called argreader, and that'll take in arguments, and that's what it's going to do. So I'll quit out of here. Create a new file, paste it in, save that. And now if we run it, that's how we're going to run it. Oh yes, we're going to run it and we're going to put some arguments after it. So these are the arguments we're going to do. So you can see the arguments are separated by spaces. And we'll see what that looks like. All right, so these are the arguments. So the first argument, which is index 0, is actually the name of the program that was just run. And we've also, I'm saying what the type of the argument is. So it's a type of string. In fact, they're all strings. So all the arguments are coming in a string. Even so, ONE was our argument index 1, ONE, the digit 2, but it is also type string. Was there, then 3, then 4, and then FIVE, because they've got spaces in them, they've all come through as separate arguments. Now you can see the quotation marks haven't been included for 4. So if you've got any special characters, characters that are likely to get interpreted by your shell before they even get to your program, then put them in quotes so that your program will see them properly. And we can even put spaces in there. So you can see FOUR, it's waited till it closed the quotes before it's gone on to look for a space to separate the next argument. Okay, we've got a question here from Dave. I apply the command to open the name.py file from Notepad++, but it fails as expected with the path of where the actual notepad is not the virtual environment. Oh, okay. So that's yeah, that's interesting to know. If you're trying to run them from within Notepad++, I didn't know you could do that. But let's see if I've got Notepad++ installed on here. Alright, so I've got Notepad++, it's brought it up in myname.py. I guess it's in run. Is that run the one that you've tried? Program to run. I don't know how to execute this, so if someone knows, they can let me know. Let's try another example of command line arguments. This one would try ones which start with dashes and double dashes, because that's a fairly common way of doing command line arguments in programs. And so it's just split them up, -h, -vv. So really just taking them literally as they appeared. Okay, so now we're going to use one of the standard libraries that comes with Python called argparse. And if you want to see a real life use for argparse, you can look at Meetup 110, the file Tim Virtual Printer, and that's where we're using it. So this is really, we're now running a tutorial on how to use that. So let's create a file called numwords. And we'll create that one. And it's just going to be a short little program here that uses argparse, and that's all it does. Okay, so very simple use of argparse, and it's just going to so we import the library. We just say that we create a parser, and then we just parse any arguments that got passed through to it. Okay, so what does that do when we run it? So if I run numwords, nothing happens. Now I'll run numwords, and I'll say --help. And now argparse is actually returning all this stuff to us. It's going, oh yeah, well, if you want to use it, you can use numwords.py, and you can use an optional argument, -h, and the optional arguments are -h or alternatively --help, and that will show this message, help message, and exit. So let's try -h, see if that works. Yes, it does. It does the same thing. Now we'll just try just any sort of number after it, and it gives us an error and say this is an unrecognized argument. So argparse is doing a lot of work for us, and just we've only really run one line of parse args, and it's producing this help message, and it's also validating the input that we're getting. Okay, Dave's got some more information for us. I applied the command to open the file name.py from within Notepad, and it fails as expected as the new file. But it also states the directory is not the path where we created the folder, but where the Notepad. Okay. Well, you should be able to create a new file from within Notepad and save it into the folder that we created things. let's try. So if I say new file, print success. Okay, we'll save that. So I click on save, and now I've got to navigate to where I want to go. So I'll presume that I wasn't there already. So I'll go Python into here, and I don't want it to be a normal text file. I want it to be, let's see what it gives me. Python file, and I'll call it, we'll just call it test notepad ++. Okay, and I'll see if I can run it from down here. Test notepad ++, success. So that worked for me. You might say that it worked because I opened it from this directory. So let's close notepad ++ here, and I'll try running notepad ++ from the start menu, and we'll create a new file. Once again, it'll print success, this time in uppercase. Save that. We'll choose Python files. And I'll call it test 2. I'll quit Notepad so it doesn't infect anything. I'll run that. The second version, and that also worked. So I'm not exactly sure, but maybe if you can work out if I've done something differently to you, Dave, in that procedure. Okay, task 12. Add a positional argument using parser.addArgument number. All right, so let's add this line here into our notepad. I'll just close all of these ones we're not using anymore. So we'll add the argument here, and then we'll pass all the arguments that have come in. So I'll save that. And so the question we had before, we tried to run numwords.py213, and that now works. Doesn't do anything, but it now works. And now if I call up the help, I can see the help's been expanded. It says now I've got one positional argument, which is what this is, and I've got one optional argument, which is -h. And so the optional argument can come before the positional argument. You'll probably find it might even work after. So let's try after and see what it does. Well, once again, it does nothing, and it does the help. So, yep, that worked. So that's task 12. Let's have a look at the solution. So the solution has done a little bit more in there. So let's copy the solution into Notepad and try running it and see what happens. So when we've created the argument parser, we've now added a description, and so that's and it's going to say it's going to convert number into words. And when we've added this argument number, we've also put in some help text, say that the number in digits convert into words, and we've also put in a type to say it's going to be converted to an integer. And then we're actually going to do something with that argument. So args becomes a namespace that we can call args.number, and it will give us what the number is that got passed in as an argument. So let's save that and try running this fantastic program. Okay, so the help now says meetup 115, running Python from the command line, convert number to words, and we've also got some help text here after our positional arguments. It didn't actually do anything, so let's run it again without the -h. And now it's we can see that it's grabbed the number that's been passed in, 213, and it's actually converted it from a string to an integer using that type. And so what we supplied here was actually a function. So that int is the name of a function, and it calls that function on top of the text that we passed in and converted it. So that's how you convert strings to integers, is just run the int function, and so that's what it's used. Okay, looking at the code for meetup 110 as a hint, so accept an optional parameter for log level. Okay, so let's have a look at 110. So I'll go back to the session summaries and we'll look at 110. And so this had a lot of tasks, and then we had the actual code. So you've got here one, add an argument for log, --log. So let's add that into our code. So it's an optional argument, so it's got the -- log there. It's got a default value, so it doesn't have to be provided. If nothing's provided, it'll use info. Action just says store it in just like number got stored, and it's got some help text saying how to use it, and it's also got a list of choices. That's right, and we want a new line there. Okay, so let's try running this. So I'll save that. Maybe we should and we can set the log level. Okay, so we'll grab these two lines. Don't need that. We won't worry about formats for now. So we're going to get the numeric level by looking at the logging library. So I better import logging. It's going to take the value of log. So it's going to come in, that's what's come in by this named argument. And it's going to convert it to uppercase and use that to get the numeric level, and then it's going to set the logging to that level. And let's just print out the level as well. Okay, so as before, nothing happened, but the logging level is printing out as 20, which is info. So I can set my log level to debug, and now the log level is 10, and that's correct. Let's try setting it to deb, and now I get an error message saying it's an invalid choice. It has to be one of these: debug, info, warning, error, or critical. Okay, let's see how I go if I type in debug in lowercase, and it doesn't recognize it, so that's no good. So my choices there have really limited it. It has to be in uppercase. So this little function I did here, trying to convert it to uppercase later, that was too late. It didn't even get to there. And it got the arg parser stopped the whole thing from working. So let's go back to our solution and see how it was solved in the solution. So I'm just going to I'll replace the whole lot. Okay, so the differences here in the code, we put in --log. We can also put in a short code, so you can do that as well. So -l is the short code, --log. I don't think it matters which order those go in. You could have done the long code first, then the short code. Default was the same, that's all the same. Now type is interesting. We didn't have a type before, but now we've put in a function and it's string.upper. So what it's done is gone to the string class, and then in that found the method upper, so it can convert anything that we type into uppercase. And then the rest of it all looks pretty similar. And it's even got a logging statement in there as well. So let's save that and try running it. So I'll run it with the same command with the lowercase debug. And this time it worked. And we even get our logging message coming out, info, and it says that we got the number 213 coming in. So that's normally if you're running command scripts, you would actually put the positional arguments at the end and those optional ones at the beginning. And you can see it just works the same way. All right, that will also work if I said warning. And you see now, because I've set the log level to warning, we don't get the info logging message coming out. Okay, add an argument to output results in uppercase. All right, so we've done a couple of arguments here, so let's create a new one. We'll call it case, so -c --case. Default will be, let's have 3. We could have original case. Oh, actually, we want the default to be lower. We want the default to be original, actually, and the other action is going to be upper. So the two choices are going to be original or upper. And I won't need to bother setting any of this for the moment. I can convert it to upper. Okay, so print args.number, and we'll just say if args.case equals upper, then we'll print, that's Notepad's put in a tab, or just use spaces instead. And we don't actually have something to convert, so let's just say that we're going to do it. Otherwise, print it without upper in front. So we're almost at the end. What are we up to? 14. One more task to go. Oh yeah, so we were looking at, we did the upper and lower case one, so I'll show you, this is the solution that I came up with, which was just the same way as we've done the log level case. Is I created a an optional argument with name --case, and it can take either original or upper, and then the value of that argument, so args.case, so it just uses this long name here in args, and if that's equal to upper, then I print upper and the number, because I can't do a number in uppercase otherwise, and otherwise I just print it without the word upper. So we'll look at the solution that's provided, and the solution is using action equals store true, and that's what that does is if it sees this optional argument coming in, it stores a true in that variable. So I don't need to then get a value for it, because I'm really only interested in whether it's true or false. And so then I can use that as a true or false in args.upper. So let's give it a go, see if it works. So it looks like it's even slightly shorter than the solution I did. So now it's got an invalid argument upper. In fact, because what I should be having is -u. Okay, so let's do -u. And there we go, 213 in uppercase. Or if I do it without the -u, it's 213 in lowercase. Okay. So what I've done now is I've taken some code here from Meetup 102, which is one of our early meetups, which just has this function here, number name, that can convert any number into words. And I've used an argument parser that, so what have we got? It takes the number, it takes the log, we can set a log level, we can set upper and lower case, and that's all. So let's try running that. So let's save this into our folder, save page as, and we're in the raw view, so it'll just save it straight as a Python file. And let's put it into our folder. And now I can run it and give it a number, 213, and it returns 213. So, you know, we can say 256, and yep, 256, put the dash in the right place. Let's give it a really big number, and that is 2,566,438,762,489,762. So you can see the code that that does that calculation. It's only 20-30 lines long, but it's quite a flexible piece of code. So it's a fun piece of code there to understand. Let's try it in uppercase. -u, and there it is, all in uppercase. So I hope you've learnt something tonight. The thing I learnt when I was putting this together was about the py command, py, because I've come from a Linux and Mac background, so I've always just been using Python and Python 3, and didn't realize that this one existed on Windows. So yeah, if you learnt something, just put in the comments what you learnt, and I hope you enjoyed it. So next week, the next few weeks, we should have Arun teaching machine learning, and then on the first week of October we'll go back to an absolute beginners session. My next session, I'll probably be looking at something else out of Meetup 110, something else that we did in that, which was the virtual printer. So maybe I'll look at socket programming, which is network programming, and explain how that works. All right, thanks for joining me. Sorry about the interruptions. Hopefully we won't have them next time. Bye.